Hi, it's Sonia. Welcome back to my art channel. Today is going to be a video on the topic of mixed media art. I've really got into mixed media art over the last few years. I really enjoy it because of the freedom in terms of combining different, paints and pens, what I have, and it's sort of loosened me up. I think it's made me more willing to experiment, to explore, and not worry so much. So yeah, I just share this is part one, and here I share my tips on my approach to sort of layering, the basics. And yeah, this is just, for example, I've even been taking it further in terms of, you don't have to have, this is an old notebook that was a diary, and I'm even using a mixed media approach in here just to really push some of the materials like in an abstract way to see what happens on top of, note paper even. Okay, so yeah, hope you enjoy the video. Let's go. Okay, so yeah, part one of this series on mixed media art. I wanted to start with, I guess, the base layers in some ways, or the idea of layering in mixed media, because I guess that is the essential, for me, the essential component of it. As I say, I am by no means an expert in this. I would not have considered myself a mixed media artist until, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. I guess maybe, obviously, we all combine media, different materials, watercolor, pen at times. But in the past, I was always sort of more like, I'm doing a gouache painting, or I'm doing a sketch with pencils. It wasn't something I'd consciously thought about till I wanted to get a bit looser, perhaps, in art and experimental. And then obviously I think I've embraced that now, and yeah, I just wanted to share why I enjoy it so much, why I think it's so accessible, and even if you don't have many art supplies, just a few basics I think allows you to call yourself be it a hobby or a amateur mixed media artist. So yeah, let's go into, what should we start with? Okay, let's start with paper, because I wouldn't say I'm a mixed media artist on canvas. That tends to be, I tend to keep to painting with acrylics and just looking at my canvases, maybe with a bit of an oil stick on top. But no, I would say it is basically in sketchbooks and on works on paper, and notebooks and altered books as well. Like, I've made a series on altered book projects. Quickly before I put this sketchbook down, this one is completed, but where is the page? There's a page here that I would say is a great illustration, sort of basic mixed media art for me, in that, yeah, I definitely it's great for loose landscapes. And what I would say is, this is also, with regards to paper, this is actually a Artesia, I don't know if they're still available, mixed media sketchbook. You could get them in packs of 2. Is this in shops? I don't know, my desk is quite chock-a-block with all the art supplies. You could get them in packs of 2, and the paper is pretty, I don't know what the weight is, don't ask about the weight, but it's termed mixed media paper. It's pretty thick. On my desk, I've also, for comparison, got some Canson. I purchased this when it's on a good offer, like this Canson. It's called mixed media paper. It's very smooth. It's thicker than drawing paper, but it obviously isn't watercolor paper. And you can get 100 sheets, which is why I like it. It has gone up in price, but I really thought this was a great, I could go quite heavy on top with gouache, with acrylic, and yeah, I liked this paper for obviously using a variety of media, but also I love that paper as well, to be honest with you, for like gouache, just painting with gouache, and even Japanese watercolor. For me, it's perfectly adequate. Okay, so this page here, talking about layers. So what I want to go into in this first part of the series is the layering. What are the base layers that I like in my mixed media work? So obviously you can approach this in different ways depending on what you have. I would argue that watercolor, I think if you're going to go in with watercolor in mixed media, the beginnings, the start of a piece is almost the best way, because you can put anything pretty much on watercolor, whereas when you come in with your other materials, I feel that sometimes obviously on top of oil pastel, unless you fix it and cover it with a clear gesso, that might be a last layer, or something like Neo Colour 2 crayon, something very waxy, is going to resist a lot of materials on top of it. However, you can play with that. So you could, if you love the wax resist, and I'm thinking Henry Moore here, and those sort of beautiful sort of sketches, if you want to add sort of an ethereal, how do you say that? Ethereal? Anyway, you know what I mean. If you want to add sort of atmosphere to a work, and we can do this on, I thought I'd just use this. This is my new one. It's going to be mixed media. This is a tester page to show you demonstrate some of my ideas with this. So for example, let's first of all, I'll grab a brush, and I'm going to go so I can show playing around with different materials on top. Okay, watercolor, whatever watercolor paints you have. This is my Winsor, actually my good Winsor & Newton set. I've got to be honest, I don't really use in sketchbooks my best set. I tend to use student quality, because the whole point with mixed media is a lot, especially if you see abstracts, we can go into the different subjects another week, but particularly a lot of, I've noticed abstract artists, a lot of their beginning layers make it absolutely obliterated, covered up. So I'm just here playing around with the properties of me, myself, how I'm experimenting. So let's get this all wet. Yeah, you can just have fun. I mean, the great thing, why I love mixed media art, I'm sure you can be tight and precise with mixed media art, but generally if I'm approaching a piece of work, be it a sketch, whatever the genre, from a mixed media perspective, I just feel like I'm a lot more playful, because I'm like, well, let's just see what happens if I do this, and I'm not so attached to any outcome, because I know ways of covering it all back up again, particularly if I follow my sort of basics, my basic structure. I guess I do have a structure for going in with a mixed media work, which, as I say, is, to be honest with you, if I'm going to start off a piece, I will go water-based paints, be it these. So these are the Winsor & Newton. Over here I've got out this set. This is where I sort of put together all leftover paints as well. So this is Cotman. I know I squeezed some Cotman. These are Cotman watercolours, which are absolutely fine for my purposes. So I like to sometimes with a watercolour, what you might also want with mixed media art, another tip, what my technique is to actually have a few pieces going at once, because with the watercolour, sort of the bleeding, sometimes you want to give it time. You want to also let the underlayers dry a bit. So especially if they're quite wet. So thus, if you have like a good few sketchbooks or different little sizes, different bits of paper on the go, it allows you to jump backwards and forwards, and you're not going to like muck up or muddy areas. Getting so that's more watercolour. On this palette, I've also squeezed out, ages ago I showed this, but I didn't want to waste. I had some dried up gouache paints. I know these are Winsor & Newton gouache. So I put them, just got rid of them, not got rid of them, but put them onto this palette to use up. So this palette is definitely my sort of go-to mixed media if I just want to have fun. I don't really care. I'm almost like, well, if this paper doesn't work out well, I'll just recycle it. But gouache is also, for me, an underlayer, and you can obviously use gouache from a tube. The other underlayer that I love, and I'm going to put onto this bit of paper, is, where are my, so jelly gouache. I don't know if anyone else, they are sometimes such a good deal. I've got mixed feelings on jelly gouache, I've got to be honest with you. For gouache, and if you want to use gouache thickly, and do, this one's a little bit dried up, you see, but you want to do lovely, loose, you want to do lovely layers of it, and you want it thick, and it's in sketchbooks that you don't want to care too much about. Yeah, I mean, I do think you get a decent, this one, as I say, because it's dried up, is sort of more watery. I'm watering it down. But in general, I can use this very thickly, and I have used it thickly in, I don't know if I've got it, I don't know, I'm trying to show you, but yeah, you can use it thickly and opaquely. And I will use this as a prepping layer or beginning layer. And you can use it, water it down, experiment with the watering down properties. Another base layer sometimes I go to is my Inktense blocks, which I have talked about before on a video. There, I put those away actually, but to hand I have, this is where I first found out about them. I got one of these little palettes. So Inktense. Now Inktense is a rather nice base layer because it's meant to be permanent. It's a permanent ink layer. So it's not going to lift up. So, which is why it's also rather good, handy for urban sketching if you wanted to go on top with inks or anything else. So this could be a nice little base layer for some pieces. So yeah, is there anything else I haven't discussed? You could also use, to be honest with you, I tend to like these, someone gave me some tempera sticks. These I actually wouldn't, if I'm out and about sketching, these are quite fun for a bit of colour on a base layer, but also they're handy to put on top. I often use these if I've on abstracts now, and if I want to change up a colour, I don't like the colour, and I want to come into it, I'll use these on top. Then you can as well use acrylics. There's nothing, I tend to reserve, acrylic ink. I should say acrylic ink actually. And inks, another. I feel probably acrylic ink can go on top, but it isn't also a bad base layer because of that property of it to, I'm not demonstrating it well here, but obviously spread out and, for example, let's just put a blob in. Yeah, you've got the fun of it being able to bloom as well and merge on wet paper, and that whole, look, I've got no control over that. That's going to be a fun effect, or I might want to cover it up. Let's try some ink. I used to. This is just some inks, and this is oh my gosh. Okay. I think sometimes maybe if you're a mixed media artist like myself, I do wash my brushes, but sometimes I'm obviously not washing them well enough. I think mixed media suits me because I'm not one into very precise layers, and it's like with cooking and I don't love baking because I don't love measuring. I kind of just like to do stuff on a messy whim. So I think mixed media is also, I think it's fair to say, a little bit messy at times, and I have no problem with that. So yeah, why I think, as I say, these work as in terms of base layers is that you can easily come on top of them, but they're quite subtle. So top layers, I think often with mixed media, when you think about crayons and oil pastels and more acrylics, you can do delicate drawings with them, but in a mixed media work, I think this allows you this sort of, I'll just get my other sketchbook to demonstrate it. You get the choice. So under here, I should show processes really. I hope it's focusing okay because I didn't turn on the stop autofocus. Anyway, this has the base layers here are this rather lovely Japanese watercolor, and the pearlescent one. I love that as well. You can play around with the pearlescents if you've got them in a watercolor set. And so here I deliberately did keep the sort of more delicate areas that I could only get really, I feel, at the start of a work when you've got white paper, the sort of, the blooms. And I just thought myself, what you could do? Say you've covered up a piece, I haven't got a heavy piece. You could actually do on watercolor paper some gentle blooms and things, and then collage them on top. So there is a way of sticking back sort of a delicate watercolor area. But yeah, I just wanted to show how I deliberately kept a lot of the watercolor in that sketch. Then on top of it, that was a lot of Inktense blocks, that sketch. But let's see, is this going to dry? Well, this is drying for a bit. So I got out all this different paper as well, so we can use. But I'm going to let, that was my sketchbook just falling to the floor. Good. Anyway, this I'm going to let dry, and then this was a quick sketch. I was just testing out how this is cheap drawing paper. So this is not mixed media paper, but I still think you can do mixed media on it. So don't use at the end of the day, especially if you don't know whether mixed media is for you, use what you've got. But as long as you've got some paper, some watercolor, something for the base layers, then you're going to mix some other media in. I know this is obviously not at all any kind of like rocket science. It's pretty obvious, but on the other hand, it's good. The videos and books I have found helpful are the ones that sort of give me some creative ideas to get going and to be brave and just crack on with it. So I wanted to show then here. So these, I would say, there's not a huge amount of mixed media going on. There's probably 2 different things I'm mixing, but there's still that essence. They're not finished. There's still, for me to talk about, little landscapes. Maybe keep it small as well. This is watercolor paper, and I've gone, first of all, I can see I've gone heavy. I wanted to try out going heavy with the Neo Color 2 and using the water soluble properties. Then I've let that dry, and then on top I can tell I've gone again with crayon, and probably on top of this I will go on top with, you can use more acrylics, acrylic gouache, for example, as well. So let's see, where is the one? This one here demonstrates if it goes wrong. So what I like to keep, I keep the acrylics back a bit actually for when it goes wrong. So often I will have watercolor pieces that I don't love anymore, and what I will do is cover them. I use a lot of artists use the sort of more student basics range of acrylics because they're perfectly adequate for this job. So I will just cover over a drawing, and then this has got now another acrylic on, and it's got a base. This would be a lovely little scene I can add on top. I know on top of this I probably am not going to be able to, unless I cover it with a gesso or something, go on top with watercolor again. I would probably, but I can use, and I can demonstrate, you see, you can use these sort of tempera sticks on top, that's fine. And I can use I don't mind too much about this one because I know I can cover it up. The only thing is with your brushes and keeping your water a little bit separate, because this is now going into the acrylic territory. So I need to be a bit careful about keeping brushes to wash them out in the water, because the acrylic water I tend to stick in to evaporate. It all gets kept separate, because obviously it can't go down the drain. But yeah, on top, I know I can come on top with acrylic wash or more acrylics. So just layering with different media. Then I know acrylic markers. I really got into acrylic markers because they're a good on top layer for subsequent layers. And this one before I get up to cover again, because I'm not sure what I'm doing with this. Your Stabilo people, these little Stabilo woodies. Again, I feel these are a pretty good top layer. Also water soluble though, so you've got that. Pencils, I think hopefully we've all got some. Generally, whatever brand you have, you probably, especially on a light acrylic, can make some marks with pencils. So just play about with pencils. For me, I feel like they are often a way of getting some more drawing into a sketch if I want to make it a bit more haphazard. The other thing to play about with then is obviously also, where did I put the oil pastels? I did get them out because oil pastels are often rather nice. Like I want to keep that page and not keep going on top of it. These are often good to go on top of whatever paint you've got, be it gouache, acrylic. Lastly, the other material in my mixed media work that I'm using a lot more of is collage. I love collage because it's a way of, if a little area isn't right, I get to rectify it, cut out. Where did I put my collage? Because I did want to show, you know, and also for those of us that are doing altered books, if you've ended up with one and you've cut out the illustrations, you can actually play about with magazines, or with, I know a lot of artists recently, you can use acrylic markers on top of magazines. You can draw over little bits of magazines, cut them out, stick them on top of areas you don't like. Here I've done a little video on oil pastel mono printing, kind of messy, very unpredictable. Great if you like loose, naive art in some ways. Though you could get precise with it. I did actually do some quite floral drawings, actually, I felt were quite precise. But again, I like to sort of go a bit crazy with it, cut them out, and then just use them to collage on top of odd bits and bobs of paper. So tell me I didn't put, no, here it is. But yeah, you can then, yeah, acrylic washes, I don't know, acrylic washes is a good, I feel like it's a good, well, it can be a good top and bottom layer, really. It depends with, as I say, do you want delicate, or are you going to go in and have something very bold, very, you want it, if you want to go kind of dark and bold to begin with, like abstract, then you may also want to have a very acrylic cover up your page, pre-prepare it with a cheaper paint, be it jelly gouache or an acrylic. Yep. So yeah, so these are just my layers. Let's test out now on top of, has this dried? Some of it is dried, some of it isn't. But we can just, what I wanted to do is just, the joy of mixed media is that you get to kind of do it your own way as well. Like, don't feel, yeah, just grab what you have and then experiment, because what's the worst that happens? If you end up with an area you don't like, I will if I can find my collage box, because some of these boxes like fit on top of each other, which is great storage space saving, but means I can't find stuff. Anyway, so this is my little collage box that I've recently filled up again because I had some bits of old mixed media art that I'd gone over and I was like, I've had enough, I can't get any further. So say I don't like that little zone, I can play about with my odds and ends, play about with shapes. You could get really finicky, do paper cutting, or you could just basically just do some, I actually kind of like some of that. Let's see, okay, glue. The other essential for me, if I go about my basics for this whole layering project, so I'd say my basics are, if you wanted just one essential set, a watercolor set, then I would want, I'd say my other essential thing is maybe, I do love gouache. I think gouache goes on top of watercolor very well, and that's always a fun mixed media supply. Pencils or an oil pastel, and then maybe a glue stick and just some papers. So yeah, you get to cover up what you don't like. So I'd say collage is sort of there's no hard and fast, I was just thinking about this, I wanted to give some sort of like rules or guidance, but I just don't know that there is necessarily. I feel, because you could, on top of that, paint on top of the collage. You can go on top and on top. So some works will get quite bulky, and others you may want to keep fresh and like quite minimal in how much layering you do. But yeah, you just get to. So these Stabilo Woodies are very good for, on my abstracts I often use these because they just add a bit of, if you just want to add a bit of interest sometimes in your top layer, and then sort of drawing, as I say, these acrylic markers are nice because you can also go on top of acrylics. I mean, you could probably also go water-based markers if you have water-based markers on top of watercolor. That's not going to be a problem. Obviously, a lot of this stuff, there's light fast, some things are light fast, some are not. A lot of the way I work, I'm not worried about that. It's in sketchbooks, it's on throwaway paper, or I'm going to recycle the paper myself. Or a lot of the sort of actual floral drawings, I wasn't even worried. Highlighters are quite fun, you know. And then on top of this, if you got pencil, I would scan. I've got a scanner, so if I was making prints, then I wasn't even too worried because I was just scanning it in. Would I sell? I think at the end of the day as well, these days people have UV glass. If you want to, you've done a nice sketch and someone wants it and you want to sell it for a reasonable price, it makes art affordable. I've got a lot of stuff I put on the wall and yeah, it fades a little bit, but in some way that adds to the, I don't know, everything's, you know, it's finite, isn't it, in some ways? Yep, so just playing about with, I love soft pencils and graphite as well. I've really got into actually just sort of adding marks, the sort of on the top layers with pens, pencils, crayons. Now, as I say, one of my favourite, if I'm ever feeling a little bit, what's the word? I want to, you know, you want that sort of magic back in a piece, or you want to feel that like, oh, I wonder how this is going to turn out. I do love wax resist. There's something, and often I would start with the wax to begin with and do the drawing because I really like that sensation. It's like being a kid again, and you get your brush. Oh gosh, don't look at that palette, it's really and then you go on top, and then I don't know, it's like really fresh. It's like, you know, you've got the wax resisting the water. Yes, it actually has. So it feels, you've got the colour contrast, especially if you used, for example, a white or a candle or something, you'd have that. It's like a little bit of magic. And the other, if you've got a little bit of old tissue to hand, I've really got into also smearing as well on my layers. I do a lot of in mixed media work. One of my big, if you're short on time and you're terrible at cleaning brushes, I used to be so, oh, you can't use anything but a brush. But I love to have these little bits of card, and then I very much like to just not have to worry about stuffing up you could even wet the card a bit as well, which seems a bit crazy. I don't know, I just thought of that myself. Just like to smear on the paint. And again, if you've got a segment of your mixed media work that isn't right, cover it up again with white or a dark colour. You can just, I really enjoy in both landscapes now and in abstracts doing a bit of smearing. Also, actually, weirdly enough, portraits. If a bit of your portrait goes wrong, I've once sketched one of the kids and I was like, oh, I love this arrangement, but I got the head slightly wrong, cover it up, sketch on top again with a different, you know, you could use an acrylic marker, add on the head. It adds interest as well to the portraits. Anything else? I think I probably missed a lot of stuff. Please do feel free to contribute to the comments. I learn a lot, actually. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I've chalked this table. I learn a lot through the comments. In some ways I feel like still an amateur with this, but I thought I'd share it because I feel it's the beginning of summer. We're all probably, I don't know how my video content's gonna go with the kids off. And I'm looking I've really been enjoying mixed media art, to be honest with you, and I feel like I can take some of the mixed media art out and about with me as well, in terms of sketching outside, travel kits, and I think also I've learnt ways of fitting it in. I know sometimes, you know, we all are, we might have a lot of time, but it's not long stretches. Some of us may not be in a studio for like 8 hours a day. That is not feasible, but we might have odd spurts of time where we could, when the food's in the oven or the kids are busy or out with friends or whatever, we could come in and do 30 minutes, 20 minutes. And I still think that you can do a sketch quickly in 20 minutes with a mixed media approach if you start to play about with experimenting for yourself with what you have, what it layers on top, what happens with your layers. You get to know, you get your own kind of like into your own flow, if that makes sense. And then again, it's good to watch other people's videos as well when you get a bit bored. You're like, okay, I've done enough of that approach. Like I've, you know, made a ton of little abstracts, what's next? So there's always stuff to learn, and I'm learning as I go along too. All right then, that was part one. Thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.